Hello everyone, my name is Gary Wills and welcome to episode 18 of my YouTube channel. This game that I'm going to show you today looks at a different aspect of the Battle of Linselles, 18th of August 1793. This looks at the French assault on the initial Dutch garrison of the post at Linselles. First, a bit on the campaign background, and the first thing I need to say is that although the battle honour is spelt with a C, Linselles, the actual place name has always been spelt with an S, and this relates to an anomaly between various contemporary maps of the area used by the different combatants. Anyway, in August 1793, the Allies had just taken the fortress of Linselles, just inside the French border, and they were faced with a choice as to what to do. Paris was only 126 miles away, and obviously the total war philosophy would have led them to march directly on Paris. However, the British government wanted the Duke of York to attack Dunkirk on the coast, which had always been a desired outcome of the campaign, and the Austrians, their allies, preferred to attack another fortress, Le Quesnoy, and so the Duke of York marched from Valenciennes towards the coast, and on the 18th of August they were close to the little village of Lincelles. In the early morning of the 18th, as the Duke of York marched to Menin, the Prince of Orange with his Dutch forces used the support of the Duke of York to attack the French outposts, which were under the command of future Marshal MacDonald, and occupied the two little posts of Le Blétan and Lincelles. And the attack at dawn was successful in driving off the inferior French outposts. However, in the afternoon, another future French Marshal General Division Jourdan, along with MacDonald and Barrou, decided that they would attack the villages of Lincelles and Le Blétan with their forces and drive off the Dutch, which they successfully did. The Dutch commander at Lincelles, who was mortally wounded that day, sent off a request to Menin for reinforcements to help them hold back the large numbers of French that were coming his way. And as a result, the Prince of Orange asked the Duke of York for support, and the Duke of York sent the brigade of guards to Lincelles to retake it. So this is the French order of battle as they approached Lincelles to take it from the Dutch garrison. Jourdan led a demi-brigade of 3 battalions with 2/3 of another demi-brigade and half a company of light artillery or horse artillery. Barrou led another separate demi-brigade supported by the 2nd Paris Volunteers, and altogether the force was 4,500 men with 11 to 14 guns, depending on how many of the infantry battalions had battalion guns with them. Awaiting the French force in Linselles was General Major Frederick Willem van Nostitz. He was 70 years old and had just been promoted, and he had with him the De Schepper infantry regiment with their battalion guns, and 2 grenadier battalions and 2 squadrons of a Guard Dragoon regiment, along with a pair of 6-pounder guns and 2 12-pounder guns. In all, he had only 1,275 infantry, 165 cavalry and 6 guns. So here are the troop profiles for this black powder game, and there's a bit of a difference in quality, although both sides had staff rating of 8. Because of the nature of the French force, I've reduced their close combat dice by 1 and their shooting dice. They also have a morale save of 5+ instead of 4+, but their stamina remains at 3. They are unreliable, and so they don't move on equal score, and the 2 of the battalions are large. The battalion guns have profiles of 2-1-1, while the artillery légère is normal battery 3-2-1. The Dutch are standard close combat scores and shooting scores, and morale saves, and the stamina is also standard. The Grenadiers, 2 Grenadier battalions, count as elite 4+ and also reliable. And similarly to the French guns, the pairs of guns have 2-1-1 profiles. The fortifications add +1 to morale save. All told, the difference in quality reduces the points value of the outnumbering French, but they still outscore the Dutch considerably. And this shows the battlefield map with the Dutch defence centred around the fortification they built that morning, since they took possession of the village, and they have to face off against the French approaching from 2 different directions: Beru from Bondues and Jourdan from Vanbrugés. So in terms of victory conditions, the Dutch have to break both French brigades, which each brigade has breakpoints of 3 units. From the French, they have to capture the redoubt and break the French brigade. Its breakpoint was also 3 units in 10 moves. This shows the deployment of the 2 sides, with the Dutch on the top of the hill in the outskirts of the village, while the French deployed approaching from 2 directions at the bottom of the photograph. This is a close-up of the Dutch deployment, highlighting the 2 Grenadier battalions. Meanwhile, the De Schepper battalion was on the other end of the line, with its battalion guns supporting the 12-pounders in the redoubt. Meanwhile, the Guard Dragoons are formed up on the road in support. And this is a close-up of Beru's brigade, with 2 sets of battalion guns and his 4 battalions with tirailleurs out front. And here's Jourdan's brigade with the horse artillery on the road and tirailleurs out front, and the battalions arrayed accordingly. Here we are in French turn 1. Beru's managed to deploy his battalion guns, and these tirailleurs have managed to deploy forward into musket range of the Grenadiers. However, the rest of the brigade was able to move further. Meanwhile, Jourdan on his left is able to move forward a couple of his infantry battalions and deploy their battalion guns, and also move forward the horse artillery into the centre of the battlefield. It's worth saying that under the rules of this scenario, I wasn't allowing the French to use brigade moves to try and mimic the lack of cohesion in the army at the time. He then failed to get his tirailleurs moving further forward, and so this ended his movement. So in the Dutch turn 1, the Grenadiers slightly altered position to line the hedge in the orchard to the south of the village, and face off against the tirailleurs, while the Dutch artillery was able to bring the French infantry under fire and cause, in this case, 2 casualties on the larger of Beru's battalion. And on the other flank, 2 casualties were caused by the artillery on 2 of Jourdan's battalions. French turn 2 started very badly for Jourdan. He blundered when trying to urge his tirailleurs forward, and this only resulted in them retiring. And here you can see them forced back down the road. Amazingly then, Beru also blundered, and his battalion in this case got an advance 1 move result. And you can see that here in this overview of the position taken from the Dutch perspective. It wasn't all bad news for the French. Their artillery opened up and caused some casualties and disorder on the Dutch infantry. And this was also the case with the De Schepper battalion on the Dutch right flank. In Dutch turn 2, the Dutch are obviously pretty happy with the lack of progress on the French side, and focus their attentions with their artillery on the static French infantry. And this caused more casualties on Jourdan's battalions, and indeed on Beru's advancing battalions. And we're now in French turn 3, and Jourdan is making very slow progress up the slopes towards the Dutch position. Jourdan tried to get his tirailleurs moving forward again, but this was again unsuccessful. And this was not very helpful because it stopped all advance by the rest of his brigade. Again, in Dutch turn 3, the focus was very much on the artillery fire that they could bring to bear on their assailant. So that artillery fire continued to be very effective. It resulted in 1 French battalion being shaken and another receiving more casualties, with both being disordered. On the Dutch right, the De Schepper battalion, having received 2 casualties from the French artillery fire, had retired behind the slope. We're now in French turn 4, and Beru is slowly getting his infantry forward, in this case led by the 2nd Paris Volunteers, while for Jourdan the advance is being led by the 1st d'Allier Volunteers, cheered on by the representative of the people, Levasseur. However, he's had no more luck with the tirailleurs, who again have stopped further movement. For the rest of Jourdan's brigade, they can only wait while the disorder is removed at the end of the turn before they could advance in support of the 1st d'Allier. And this shows the position of Jourdan's brigade. Still a long way to go to reach the Dutch in the bottom of the picture. In Dutch turn 4, the position remains the same. They're relying on their artillery to try and keep the French at bay. And this seems to be working. The 2 battalions of Jourdan's brigade on the left wing have both been disordered and are both now shaken, with 1 having been forced to retire. And this photograph shows the overview of the French attack at the end of Dutch turn 4. Well, French turn 5 began an exciting way with the 2nd Paris Volunteers charging home on the one of the 2 Grenadier battalions in the orchard. And this ended up a disastrous fight for the French. They ended up with 2 excess casualties, so that's 6 casualties in all, and the break test with -2 resulted in them being broken and removed from play. And here you can see the result of that, with Beru's attack now looking pretty fragmented. Meanwhile, in French turn 5 on Jourdan's side, he's managed to get his men moving forward now. The tirailleurs have advanced to support the first allié, as have more of the French infantry, and he is hopeful of better results to come. Dutch turn 5 was much less effective in terms of the effect of their artillery fire on the encroaching French. And this was also true of the fire aimed at Jourdan's battalions. Now into French turn 6, and Beru is finally getting his remaining battalions to close up on the Dutch position, and the tirailleurs are trying to work a way around the flank of the grenadiers' position. Jourdan, meanwhile, had a difficult decision to make. He had 2 units shaken. If he'd had a 3rd unit shaken, he would have had a broken brigade. So rather than try to urge his men further forward, he chose to rally one of the 2 shaken battalions, and at least he was successful in that. However, his infantry is still in a fragile state, as this picture shows. So now on Dutch turn 6, and the 2 grenadier battalions have now formed up to face off against Beru's encroaching battalions. Meanwhile, Jourdan's judgment to rally one of his battalions in his turn was proved to be correct, because the French artillery quickly shook another one of his battalions and disordered them in their turn. So we're now on French turn 7, and Beru has launched a bayonet charge on one of the 2 Dutch grenadier battalions, and aided by the 2 supporting battalions and the tirailleurs, has managed to beat the Dutch grenadiers 2-1 in the close combat on casualties, and 5-2 on overall result. In the resulting break test, the Dutch Grenadiers were unluckily scored only 4, which is a break result, and they were removed from the table. However, worse was to follow for their supporting battalion, which had to take a break test as they had supported, and that was a 3, which resulted in them also breaking and being removed from the table. And the result, as you can see here, is the whole Dutch left wing has been destroyed. Now on Jourdan's flank, the situation is quite difficult, because his units are very spread out, and so he's managed to send one battalion forward towards the Dutch redoubt, while he tries to rally off the shaken status of another of his battalions in the rear. We're now on Dutch turn 7, and Van Nostitz has perhaps played his last card, as he used the Guard Dragoons to shore up his left flank to face Beru's oncoming battalions. However, the artillery has continued to be successful and has shaken the leading battalion of Jourdan's men, also disordering it. We're now in French turn 8, and in this turn Beru managed to throw an 11 for his command roll, which meant that none of his units could move this turn. So the upshot was that Beru was unable to exploit his success in his previous turn. In desperation on French turn 8, Jourdan has brought forward his final battalion with a follow me order, hopefully enabling him to rally some of the more shaken units in front of him. Dutch turn 8 started with the Guard Dragoons charging downhill into the leading battalion from Beru's command. Meanwhile, their artillery broke the leading unit of Jourdan's command. Amazingly, the Guard Dragooners were unsuccessful in their close combat with the French infantry, and were forced to retire, and went through the Die Schlepper infantry regiment, which had formed up behind the redoubt. So this shows the position at the end of Dutch turn 8, with the Dutch in a precarious position but still holding on to the redoubt, and their brigade is still unshaken. So French turn 9 starts with the 1st Battalion of the 45th Regiment charging home on the battalion guns of the Die Schlepper infantry regiment. Unfortunately, they were shaken by the closing fire of those guns. The French artillery were successful, however, in breaking the 6-pounder guns on the road. In the ensuing close combat between the 1st 45th and the battalion guns of the Die Schlepper infantry regiment at the end of the turn, the inevitable happened, with the French infantry winning 4-1 and destroying the guns. However, despite this success, having been shaken, the 1st 45th could advance no further. Meanwhile, Beru had again been unsuccessful in moving his battalions forward to exploit the advantage they had gained. So we're now in Dutch turn 9, and the Die Schlepper infantry battalion has moved across to confront the 1st 45th. But the overview situation looks pretty desperate for the Dutch, as there are large numbers of French infantry around them. However, a count up at the start of French turn 10 proved that Jourdan's brigade had been broken by the closing fire of the battalion guns of the Schlepper infantry regiment, and this resulted in them being required to retire. So in French turn 10, Beru was still in the fight, and while the 1st 47th Battalion charged the redoubt from the flank, another of his battalions charged the flank of the Die Schlepper regiment. The fight for the redoubt was never in doubt, and the 1st 47th stormed into the redoubt, destroying the 12-pounder crews inside. However, it was a different story for the Die Schlepper infantry regiment. Despite being attacked from the flank, they managed to fight back sufficiently to cause 2 casualties on the French battalion, and with the support of their cavalry managed to draw the fight overall. And in the resulting break test, the French battalion was broken and removed from the table, and the Die Schlepper battalion withdrew behind their supporting cavalry. So in a last-ditch attempt to break Beru's brigade, the Guard Dragooners charged the 1st 47th. However, they were obviously dispirited by this time, as they failed to make any impression on the French infantry, buoyed up by their recent successes. So the Dutch cavalry were forced to retire away from the redoubt towards their own infantry. So this shows the battlefield at the end of the game, with both sides in a pretty sorry and tattered state. So at the end of the scenario, if we look at the overall result, for the Dutch brigade, there were only 2 battalions broken, and consequently the Dutch brigade did not reach its breakpoint of 3 units. On the other hand, Beru had 2 of his 2 battalions broken, which is 2 out of the 3 he would have needed to be broken, which just about kept him in the fight, and Jourdan's brigade was broken. Overall, given the state of play, although despite the fact the French had captured the redoubt, you have to consider the game a draw. So there we have it, an interesting scenario, very unbalanced, but nonetheless an interesting game, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you have enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and give me any comments that you have on the game and the scenario. Please look out for my other videos. I'm up to 19 videos of different sorts and different games, covering both the Peninsular War and the French Revolutionary Wars. And look out for future videos to come. Thanks very much.